Hello, my name is Isis Fernandez, and I'm professor of English at Lone Star College, Kingwood, near Houston, Texas. And I'm pretty excited here to show you all the things and little tricks I do to try to get my class online, or at least going through the process of converting my face-to-face class to online. So if you're watching this video, you're probably freaked out. You probably got an email from your administration saying, hey, we're going to go online and we're going to do this in a couple of weeks and you've got to figure this out. It's okay to freak out. It's perfectly fine to freak out. This is a pretty big undertaking. So let me just start off by saying no one's expecting you to be perfect at this. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be done. So what I'm going to show you essentially is how I actually put my classes online. And I do this every semester because I actually teach online. I also teach face-to-face. I have 3 sections of an English 1302, which is the second semester of freshman English, to put online. I already have them as hybrid because I do like the functionality of online and the functionality of face-to-face. So I don't have much to do as far as putting stuff online. But I'm still going to use the same techniques and the same resources I would use if I had a class that I had to put online 100%. A little background about me. I am Quality Matters certified. So some of the things that you are going to see, I actually learned in Quality Matters. I've actually took a couple of courses on how to teach online through several organizations, and of course my organization, Lone Star College Kingwood. In addition, I genuinely like teaching online, and of course one of my best friends happens to be an instructional designer, so I kind of know a couple of tricks here. So let's get started. So you've got this email, you're going online, you're not quite sure how to do this. So the first thing you should do is take inventory. What you have access to, what you don't have access to, what you know, what you don't know, what you can find out. So one of the very first things that I would do if I were you is to look at the syllabus. The last time you saw your students, did you finish a complete lesson right before spring break and decided that after spring break you would start a brand new lesson? Because if that's great, if you did that, that's great. That's actually ideal. I actually stopped in the middle of a lesson. I actually did, we're doing a graphic novel in my 1302. We did the actual visual lessons, the elements of design before spring break. And my plan was to hit the narrative part after spring break, giving them a break in the middle of this 2-week lesson. So I was in the middle of a lesson. Now, here's the question. Do I come back to that lesson or do I stop, drop, and move on to another lesson? That's going to depend on how much time you have left in your semester, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, you want to also look at your syllabus and look at your lessons and see if they are linked somehow. I can totally see professors like math and science linked. One lesson is linked to another, and you need to learn one thing before you move on to another. You need to see how best you're going to try to address that. This is interesting times we're living in. So in a perfect semester, you will be able to hit all the things you typically hit. This semester, you may not be able to hit that. So the next thing I usually do, and I actually like to do this at the beginning of every semester with my online class, but I actually did this when I suspected we were probably going to go online with my 1302 face-to-face classes. I sent them an email and sent them a survey. And in that survey, I asked them a couple of questions. I made it anonymous because I wanted my students to be able to give me some really good feedback. And in this survey I asked if they had Wi-Fi, access to Wi-Fi, solid access to Wi-Fi, solid access to a laptop or a computer, or if they were doing this on a phone or a tablet. I asked them how best they thought they learned, and I gave them a couple of scenarios. Do you best learn by a video, some follow-up questions, and a chance to ask questions of the professor? Do you learn better by reading and then taking a quiz? Do you learn better with interaction? I kind of feel like I know what they were going to say, but what I'm really measuring there is if they are aware of what their learning style is. I also asked them if they had any worries about going online and if they had any questions. And those particular questions I use to actually look at maybe some issues that I would have as I'm developing and designing the coursework, what I can address, what I can't address, what I can find solutions to. For example, one of the issues that my students had or have is, how will I know if things are due? Well, I can easily address that by creating a checklist at the beginning of each module. Another thing that my students were worried about is, how can I get in contact with my professor? I need maybe some feedback on some thesis, or I need some feedback on what I'm thinking about for my paper. And so that's easily solved by creating online office hours. And we'll talk about that here soon. And then another thing you want to look at is accommodations. What accommodations did you have to fulfill face to face that you now need to fulfill online? And working with your Office of Disabilities, of Student Services and Disabilities, will help you with that. What do they suggest for accommodations and how you can put that into your class? Now, I want you to notice that we haven't even talked about the learning management system. We haven't talked about any curriculum things. We haven't talked about any of the neat, cool toys that are out there to put this class together. And that's not what this is about. Taking inventory is about what you need to know and what you need to know now going forward as you're putting things together. Another thing that you may want to think about when you're putting your class together is if you want to proceed as an asynchronous class or a synchronous class. And an asynchronous class is something where students can work at their own pace, maybe in a limited time span, maybe like a week or 2 weeks, depending on how long you want your modules to be. And they could do stuff like discussion boards and video lessons. They can do readings on their own, quizzes on their own. Or if you want to do a synchronous class where you're doing a live stream or the same activity at the same time. You can do either or a combination of both. Right now, I'm leaning towards a combination of both based on a question that I asked in my online survey of my students of whether they would like an opportunity to have a live stream class. Now, I say this with the caveat of all of my lessons are going to be video lessons. So if I'm going to do a synchronous session, I'm going to plan it out for a specific reason. I don't want them to be any more than about 30 to 45 minutes. I want to give everybody in the class a chance to talk, and I don't want it to be 200 students in a class. I may want to limit it to about 10, maybe 15. I've done some classes where it's 15 and it's worked really well. But I want to be able to take them in smaller groups, because if we're doing that, I can actually do a lot better work that way than to have 200 students in a class live stream, right? Now, you also want to think about how you want to deliver your coursework. And that's modules. And modules, what that really means is a unit of measurement almost, is how you're going to package your lesson and your activities. So how long do you want your modules to be? Do you want them to be 1 week long? Do you want them to be 2 weeks long? I would recommend to being consistent. If you want your modules to be 1 week long, then all your modules need to be 1 week. Because here's the thing, once you give the rules of the game to students, you don't want to fall back and say, well, no, every module was 1 week except this one module that was 2 weeks. So think about how long you want those modules to be. And one of the things I think about modules, when to open them and when to close them. Because when to close them really talks about when you have time to grade the work from the module. One thing I do with my 1302 students that I've converted into hybrid is that their modules open on Tuesday, which is the first day of class for the week, and they close the following Monday at 11:59 p.m. I do that because I can easily grade their modules on a Tuesday afternoon after I see them, or I can grade it on a Wednesday. So think about that when you're doing modules. Now, the next thing is taking more inventory, and you want to see what you actually have access to. What you have access to through your institution or your college. I have access to WebEx through our learning management system and through my college. I also have access to something called Screencast-O-Matic, and this is something that I actually paid for, willingly and lovingly did, because I knew I was going to use this many times over as I was going through my class. You also want to think about how heavy you want to get into editing. You don't have to edit anything or everything. I just happen to be a little bit extra and like to have a little polish to my stuff. But you don't have to edit everything. But you do want to see if you want to like add a couple of panels while you're doing a video, and that could help with clarifying things with your students. If you want to get into this, there's great YouTube videos on how to use things like iMovie and how to use Adobe Spark and how to use the Adobe Suite, of which Lone Star College professors actually have free access to. But more likely, you probably don't need to edit at all. You probably could just use PowerPoint and a voiceover in PowerPoint, and that would work very, very well. Another thing you need to ask yourself is what you know about your class already. How have they been responding to you as a professor and to the material so far? Has your class needed extra help on things? Are they the type of class that gets things once or twice after you explain them and you can just run and have fun? Are they accelerated? Are they on time? Do you need to review some things for them sometimes? Another thing that you may want to ask yourself is, how will you as a professor check in with your students? And how will you create a space for them to check in with you? How are you going to deal with office hours? And how will you communicate in this environment? There's a couple of things you can do. Email is always open. It's always interesting and always there and available. What I like to do is put actual office hours to the email, so they know that I'm going to respond at 9 a.m. on a Monday rather than 6 p.m. on a Saturday. I tell all my students to download the Pulse app. And the Pulse app is the actual app for our learning management system, Brightspace. I like using the Pulse app because whenever I put an announcement up on their class, on their D2L class, they get a message on their phone as if it was a text message. So they know that if I'm putting an announcement on there, it's something that I just put up or something that I've set to come on a certain time. So they know that I'm reaching out. Also, how else will you try to communicate with your students? Will you use video? Will you use audio when you give them feedback on some work? Think about some things, and you don't have to answer them right now, but these are the things that you may want to take inventory in before you even start moving things around and uploading anything. I hope this is helpful, and I hope that you learned a couple of things. The next couple of videos will actually move some things around, look at some really cool toys, and see how best we can put all these modules together. Bye, guys.